Happy to be here tonight. By way of background, I rode the South Shore when I went to the University of Notre Dame. I used to take the Chicago Northwestern into the loop, walk across the loop, over to Old Randolph Street Station, get on the Shake, Rattle, and Roll, and take it to South Bend in 1978 to 82. So I rode the old orange wood cars. I remember all the old flag stops that don't exist anymore in the middle of the country. And I succeeded the guy who was running the railroad at that time, Jerry Harris. So I got a lot of connection to the railroad. Here's a map that you've probably seen before, but we're a 90-mile system. We run from South Bend International Airport. That's where we are today. As many of you probably know, we started off in downtown South Bend. We were asked to leave after we weren't good citizens in the community, so we moved out to the west, and we're now at South Bend International Airport, and we run 75 miles under our control. That's that blue line. And at Kensington intersection, interlocking plant in Chicago, we cross the CN and we jump on the metro system for the last 14 miles of our trip. Preserving the service. This is about history, and we almost went extinct, like many of the other interurban railroads you can see in the great exhibit that's in the room next door. The Chesapeake and Ohio petitioned the Interstate Commerce Commission to get out of passenger service operations. The Chesapeake and Ohio was given the opportunity in 1971 to join Amtrak. They're one of 6 freight railroads around the country that said no. And they bided their time, and 5 or 6 years later, they petitioned to terminate the service. And a group of very engaged, passionate citizens in Northwest Indiana got together and advocated for the preservation of the interurban line that we all know as the Chicago, South Bend, and South Shore Railroad. And Doc Bowen, who was the governor, I mentioned Doc also because Kerry taught with his granddaughter, Angie Bowen. And so Doc Bowen was the governor at the time when the district was created. And we were created at the time to fund the deficit operation of the freight railroad's passenger service. And that's how it went. That's how it existed for the first 13 years. Chessie sold it off to a private equity, and it was the Venango River Corporation. Venango River, South Shore Freight was a very profitable railroad, but Venango River cross-collateralized the South Shore against the Missouri and Western. That was not a very good railroad, and it sent the railroad into bankruptcy. And in 1990, the state of Indiana, along with help from our Congressman Pete Visclosky, purchased the passenger asset out of the bankruptcy, and we ultimately negotiated to acquire the footprint, the assets, the overhead track, the ground, the trackage rights, and we have a tenant on the line that's owned by Anacostia Pacific, a freight railroad. They're Louisville in Indiana here, as well as South Shore Freight in Indiana. They're our tenant, and we still operate our services out of Michigan City, Indiana. And so from the ashes of an attempt, from where we thought we were going to be extinct like many of the other systems, we kept going, and the state funded us. And for the first, I'll say, 15, 20 years of our existence, we poured money into the roadbed that hadn't been invested in the roadbed for decades. So it was decades and decades of active, lack of infrastructure going into the system, and we spent much of the first several decades of the railroad rebuilding it from the ground up. Today, we are what we call in our industry at a state of good repair. So our bones, our roof is good, our furnace is good, our signal system is relatively new. Everything about our railroad, our bridges are in great shape. We're in an enviable position from a passenger railroad standpoint from a lot of our other peers around the country. Overhead catenary. We just finished up last year replacing overhead catenary from the 1920s. That catenary wire was thinner than a dime, and we had that wire that ran from South Bend to Michigan City. It used to keep me up at night in the wintertime when we'd run the service between South Bend and Michigan City, because that wire was really, really brittle. And if you've ever ridden that territory of the South Shore line, it's extremely rural. And there's places where it's a mile or two from any road from our railroad system. So we got brand new wire, very exciting.
Every day we start with this focus. Everything we do, if we don't do this, we won't survive. We'll become one of the extinct railroads you see in the other room. So we focus on safety. I used to be at Metra. We had a number of turnouts that were low speed, a number 10 turnouts. You can only go faster than 15 miles an hour. Unfortunately, a couple of our engineers hit the same turnout at 70 miles an hour and derailed trains. So when I got to the railroad, I replaced every number 10 turnout with a number 20 turnout and put these signs up to remind engineers when they're coming by, hey, you got to slow down if you're going to be moving over to an adjacent track. We've done a lot of work in grade crossings. Many interurbans, many railroads still in the country have crossbucks at grade crossings. We had a lot of crossbucks and stop signs on our system. We've worked very hard to upgrade that technology, those safety elements. I've closed, I think, 25 crossings, which is in the railroad industry, getting a crossing closed usually takes an act of Congress. We are actively trying either to close crossings or to increase the safety of those crossings by adding gates, lights, and bells. And what I really like to do is put in concrete medians that make it really difficult for a driver to go around the gates. They're going to tear up their underbody if they try to do that. This is another big change to our industry. I've been in this industry for 43 years. Positive train control. It's a great system. It's an unfunded federal mandate. They told all of us railroads in the same time, everybody should install this system at once across the country. We had never done it before. It was not the way it should have been done. We should have, like the air traffic control system, one company that accesses the system. This is my personal opinion, that it should be a shared technology that we all can tie into. Unfortunately, that's not the way Congress did it. But we now have a system. It is not an active, it's a secondary system. For an engineer, the number one system they follow is the signal system. What we don't want them doing is relying on PTC to run the trains for them. So it's not a non-vital system, but it's an important overlay to our safety service. For those of you who don't, probably you could all teach this class, but for those of you who don't understand what it is, along our right-of-way, there's certain markers. And if an engineer is coming up to an area where they're going 80, but they should be going 40, they've got a certain amount of time to slow the train down. If they don't slow down, they'll start to get some beeps, and if they don't listen to the beeps, the satellite sends a signal to the train, and the train stops dead in its tracks. So that's a system that was put in place after a number of really horrific collisions around the country. It's now in place on every passenger railroad and any freight railroad that runs either on a passenger line or carries hazmat along with it. These are our goals. Our goals have been increase the frequency of our service, add more trains, reduce the travel time to and from market. People don't really care about distance. People care about time in their lives. It's not, if it takes you an hour and a half to drive 15 miles, it's still an hour and a half out of your life. If it takes you 45 minutes to go 45 miles, you're going to choose the 45-mile trip versus the hour and a half, 15-mile trip. So we want to reduce the time. We want to improve reliability. On-time performance has been our goal, and we're believing eventually when we get out of the COVID sort of malaise that we've been in with people not going to work in the office environment, and we're starting to see some return on that, we think we're going to double our ridership. The state of Indiana has been a huge supporter of ours, and I'll go over that in a minute, but they're not necessarily out there with they're not so pro-transit that they're going to throw the huge amounts of money that they have at the South Shore Railroad. They've done it because they believe that they're going to get $2.5 billion or so of private sector investment that's going to come and follow the improvements we're making on the South Shore line. I can tell you that that's a 20-year projection of $2.5 billion. I think in the first year of operation, we've already seen about $700 million of private sector investment that's already in place. And the first dollars in are the riskiest. So once these first entrepreneurs are going to put their hundreds of millions of dollars in and they're proven successful, this is going to be a very conservative figure. The state anticipates $2 for every dollar they've put into the South Shore, more likely a $4 for $1 investment return. And I always highlight this, the investments, and I'll talk about what we've done, are going to improve safety on the system. Here, I mentioned COVID. In 2019, and this is just a 6-7 month projection, through July of 2019, we had 1.8 million trips, a little almost 1.9. This past year, we're at 1.1, and that's a lot less, but it's a lot more than we were seeing in like 2020, 2021. In 2020, we did 10% of our overall ridership. 2021, we were at about 20%. So we've been seeing progressively better and better and better performance on ridership. And we are seeing really year over year 15 to 20% increases in our ridership. And a lot of that's from the changes from our double track project that I'll get into here in a minute. Here's about the South Shore rider. We're mostly women, very well educated, executive level positions. And this is what, and this number is a couple years ago. Our average household income is around $88,000 a year. The average household income in our 4-county area is probably about $50,000. So our rider's household is has almost 2 times as much income. And the reason is because generally, we've done studies, if you get a job in Chicago versus a similar job in Northwest Indiana, there's about a 40% wage premium. So from Northwest Indiana's perspective, we take our citizens, we send them to Chicago, they pay us the higher wages, they come back to Northwest Indiana, they spend the money in our economy. It's a good deal for us. Here's our existing service. Before we did the double track project, we were running 43 trains a day. We're now running 58 trains a day. We had 21 weekend trains before the double track. We're now at 23 weekend trains. And we're hoping, as I said, we're 3.4 million total in 2019. And this year, I'm hoping that we're going to be about 2.2 million by the end of the year. Again, year over year, we keep increasing. The other thing, I'm going to pause here and talk about this. Our bread and butter rider for years was the Monday through Friday, 8 to 5 commuter. I could rely on that person. And that person bought a monthly ticket and they sat in that seat every single day of the month. And I didn't have to market to anybody else. You were buying my monthly ticket. What happened with the pandemic is that you're now going in 1 day a week. You might go in 2, you might go in 1 every other week, you might go in, I have more discrete riders today than I've ever had before, because I used to have this one person in this seat 21 days a month, and now I probably have 4, 5, 6 different people that are occupying that seat. So while I may be serving fewer rides, I'm probably serving more riders than I did prior to the pandemic. Again, existing service, we have 19 stations. We own 12. 7 of them are on the Metro system in Chicago. Our fleet currently is 94 cars. We are leasing 26 double-deckers from Metro. And so there's 14 more of those that are being rehabbed and should be in by the end of the year. So our fleet will become 108 cars. I used to work on the Metro system. I used to joke that you can't throw a rock and not hit a Metro train. They have 11 or 12, 13 different spokes, depending upon branch lines in and through Chicago. And in Northwest Indiana, we had the one line that was still remaining in the South Shore system. So we looked at a growing population, especially in Westlake County, and we also looked at the infrastructure of the South Shore line, and we realized we needed to upgrade our system. So again, I mentioned the fact that Chicago pays almost 40% higher. A good percentage of the job availability is in Chicago still to this day. Chicago is the 3rd largest economy in the country and 8th largest in the world. So I know everybody talks about, oh, woe is Chicago. It's an economic engine, and don't let anybody tell you it's not. So we needed to tap into that market. So one of the first things we looked at doing was double tracking our main line. And Samuel Insull's picture's in there. Someone said, when did this project start? And I was reminded by my friend Norm Carlson that Samuel Insull, when he bought the railroad in the 20s, talked about double tracking the South Shore. He certainly put in, other than this investment, it was the largest single investment in the South Shore's history. He didn't get double tracking done. And so we had a section of mostly single track railroad between Michigan City, where we house our cars at night and do our maintenance, and Gary, Indiana. So essentially, when a train left in the morning, it's follow the leader kind of service. If there's anything wrong with the train in front of you, everybody waits. And when a train comes from the other direction, that's coming from double track territory, it waits until it can clear and get into that single track territory. So that area was a bottleneck, something that we had looked at for decades to fix. And finally, in 2024, we finished that project. We actually finished it under budget and ahead of schedule. And so we opened up service. We have 16 miles of new second track. We have high-speed crossovers. We have high-level boarding stations. Who's ridden the South Shore? I mean, everybody's ridden the South Shore. What a silly question. If you haven't ridden it, come on over and ride it. Our boarding platforms are not low-level. They're high-level boarding. So just like when you walk onto an elevator, there's no stairs. Our platforms are level with boarding. And almost all of our stations now are high-level boarding platforms, which is really good for our customers who are either getting older or have disabilities. It's also opening up a huge opportunity for our bike program, because if we would not let bikes on trains from low-level platforms, our entrances to our stations were just too narrow. It wasn't safe. So now we have a huge and ever-growing bike train population I'll get into a little bit. Here's the area of the investment from 11th Street Station, or 11th Street in Michigan City to just to the east of Gary Metro. 26-mile corridor right through the state and national park. So we had to be very mindful when you're dealing with the ecology of the park that we did it the right way. We never had an issue with any kind of environmental concern. Here's a picture of one of the cars that I rode when I was going to school. The beautiful orange, there's the logo, the little train that could. You can see that there on the side. Those cars were retired in 1982. They were built in the 20s. So they were long, long overdue. Some of them still are in existence. I think Illinois Railroad Museum. There's a museum up in Wisconsin in Baraboo that have restored some of these passenger rail cars. So they're still in existence. This over here, you can see the South Shore line sign. That's our old station in Michigan City. I'm going to point that out in another slide in a minute here. This is from Norm Carlson's collection. It's a special train. I'm sure he took this as a kid, and that's why he sent me that picture to include. And here is one of our trains in single track territory before we did the project. And these were one of the series of cars. We bought 42 cars in 1982. They came in online from Nippon Sharyo. Nippon Sharyo, this was their first North American car set that they built. They had not been in this market. They exited the US market about 7 or 8 years ago. It really hurt us because they built every one of our cars and most of the cars on the Metro system. Why is this project an enhancement to safety? Well, if you've ridden the train like you just raised your hand, you may have gone through Michigan City. This is 10th Street. And right about here, there was a basketball hoop. I love this story. Every day in the summertime, the kids would be out playing. And when the train would come by, they'd say, stop, and everybody would stop, and they'd let the train go. Then the train would go, and they'd continue their basketball game. It was cute, but there's no way to run a railroad. And so we now have our own dedicated right-of-way on the south side of 10th Street. So we're up and out of the street, and it's much, much safer. We also had, in a 2.5-mile area in Michigan City, we had 33 grade crossings. That's crazy. And so we also had a lot of grade crossing accidents. So the bigger the circle, the more the accidents that would occur because they were essentially crossbucks and stop signs. Our train stopped at the corner of Franklin and 11th Street for the stoplight because the car traffic going perpendicular to it had a green light. So we waited at a stoplight for the ability to move forward. So we all separated ourselves from our right-of-way on 11th Street as well. 11th Street still exists, but it's essentially a one-way eastbound alleyway that serves the homes along 11th Street. Here's a picture of the old station. It had not been in service since the late 70s. Eventually, Chessie or maybe Venango River sold it off to somebody who never developed it. So it sat empty for decades. Here's an aerial photo of 11th Street today. This is, we have a double tracks here with high-level platforms, and then this area right here is the one-way roadway that serves the homes that are on the south side of 11th Street. This hole right here, here's 11th Street Station again. This is what is being developed today, and I mentioned the expected $2.5 billion to $3 billion worth of private sector investment. That hole became a development project. Flaherty and Collins out of Indianapolis partnered with Michigan City to build a 5-story parking garage to service our customers, and then 12 stories of market rate apartments and about 10,000 square feet of retail. Here's a picture of the parking garage today. Here is our old station that we took, and what we did was we took off the front of the building, the facade. It's called a facadectomy. So, you know, I learned that word. You can use it, see if you can incorporate that into a sentence. But we now have the old facade embedded into the new station. Inside, it's really cool. We've got some great old pictorials. We've got a train that runs along the ceiling. It really is a beautiful station. And as part of it, they are building this $100 million development right in the middle of downtown Michigan City. And it's going to be the anchor of economic development for the community. Once this project goes, and it'll probably finish up and lease sometime next year, and once they're successful, it spreads. As like I said, the first people in are the most, they're the pioneers. They're the ones who take the most risk. Once everybody else sees that it's successful, you'll see more and more development follow. Now, here is a development that's a half a mile away that's going to be on Lake Michigan that's being built by a Chicago developer because of the double track project. This is a $300 million project on the lakefront that is being anchored by a Marriott Renaissance hotel, and it's going to have, I think, several hundred condo/hotel units that will feed into that project as well. So right there, between these two projects alone, there's $400 million worth of development in Michigan City. We've been open a year. When we were going out and selling this project, and when you go out and when you want to build these size infrastructure projects, you need to get a lot of grassroots support. You need to tell them why. Certainly anybody who wants to go to and from Chicago and wants better train service, they're going to raise their hand. Rail fans are going to raise their hand. But economically, what's the story? Well, this is just Michigan City. The projection was in the first 30 years, it would create 1,000 jobs, and it would develop $750,000 almost of private sector investment. We're at that now. There's another project that's a couple blocks away that's building workforce housing units on a 10-acre campus. That's a couple $100 million. We weren't supposed to hit it until year 30. We've hit it in year 1. So I'm pretty confident that the state's investment is going to be solid, and it's going to bode well for us in our future as we want to expand. I included a picture of our old Beverly Shores station. You might have read, some of you have seen some discussion. We own the infrastructure, the building. NIPSCO owns the land, but it's an historic structure. It was built in the Samuel Insull era. Sam's not around. It wasn't very well built. It takes a lot of tender, loving care. And while we love this structure, it needed somebody to oversee it, to give it that care. So we entered into an agreement last month with Indiana Landmarks, who's going to take over the ownership, or we're going to sublease it to them. They're raising funds to make sure it stays in good condition, and they're the right people to make sure that this landmark station, the last operating Insull era station, and one of the, it's on the National Historic Register, everybody loves to see it, that it stays in good shape. And we do what we do well, but maintaining a historic structure like that, we're very happy to partner with Indiana Landmarks. In Miller, we had an old lean-to kind of station in Miller. The Miller community in Gary was some of the most passionate people about wanting our railroad, the double track, to go forward and succeed. This is their brand new station in Miller. They're really excited. They're doing a lot of great things in the Miller Beach community. And, oh, come back. This was our groundbreaking, our ribbon cutting day.
Decades of dreaming, planning, engineering, 2.5 years of construction, and here we are, on the eve of new and vastly improved South Shore Line service. The railroad is poised to perform like never before. Now when I say this, I'm going to say it loud. We completed this project on time and under budget.
Today is just such a gratifying day. It's fantastic to have something that you believed in and you worked on and you fought for so long actually come to pass. Honestly, it's even more satisfying seeing all the benefits that these projects are actually bringing to Northwest Indiana, to see that actually happening today.
Indiana Department of Transportation is leading an effort to reduce fatalities and severe accidents on Indiana's roadways and transportation systems, multiple modes, by 25% over the next 10 years. Truly a testament to the multifaceted nature of what we've done here, so couldn't be more proud of the safety investment that we're making here on this project.
This is a day where Indiana once again proves that we can not only do big things, but we can do the biggest of things like this project. And what will come from it is even more important than today. It's about opportunity and new opportunities. It's about community investment. This is an ROI that I believe is unparalleled.
He was not driving, I promise.
This is an amazing day for Northwest Indiana. These projects are expected to create thousands of new jobs and result in billions of dollars of private investment in the area. This will yield material benefits for this generation and future generations.
Today's ribbon cutting, for me, is really a testament to leaders who came together at all levels of our government. And that is a goal to make Indiana not only the best state that it possibly can be, but a state that continues to be a place where people want to live, work, and raise a family.
Together, let's board this train of opportunity and embark on a journey towards a brighter, more prosperous future for Northwest Indiana.
So when we were trying to get funding for the project, as you might know, this is a very Indianapolis-centric state. And so we're trying to explain to them why the state should invest in hundreds of millions of dollars in Northwest Indiana. And so they have a picture of Northwest Indiana. Some people picture Gary. Some people picture steel mills. Some people picture BP Amoco industry. What they didn't project or understand was the beauty of Northwest Indiana. So at the time, as we're trying to get this going, Doc Brown was the head of the House Ways and Means, and God, who was he? It wasn't Brian, who was head of BOSMA, was head of the House. He was Speaker of the House. I arranged with a friend of mine from NIPSCO to borrow their helicopter, and we took them up on a helicopter ride, and we took from Valparaiso and we went over to Whiting, and then we flew up the lakefront, and it was a bluebird day. Wasn't a cloud in the sky. There was no wind at all, so Lake Michigan was crystal clear, and you could see Chicago in the distance in the skyline, and then you could see nothing but beautiful lakefront, the Marquette Park, the National Park, the State Park, and they're looking at Chicago, and they're looking at the beauty, and we landed, and Doc Brown said, how do we get this funded? I realized that we couldn't get everybody up from the legislature to show them what's going on in Northwest Indiana, what kind of beauty and value there is, but those two people helped us carry the ball, along with Governor Holcomb, who was our cheerleader for, like him, don't like him, or whatever, I loved him. He was our cheerleader. He led the charge to help us get funding for this railroad and put us in place for the next 50, 60 years. The other major project that we're working on, I showed that map of Chicago with 11 or 12 or 13 different spurs, depending on how you count it. For decades, there was a vision, a dream to restore passenger service on what had been the old Monon line. And in 1990, CSX sold off the remaining 6 miles of their Monon line from Maynard Junction in Munster, Indiana, up until North Hammond. So at the time, again, Pete Visklowski stepped in, he got us some money, and along with federal money, Hammond, Munster, and NICD bought this line and preserved it. And so most of you probably know, when railroads go away, they generally become bike trails. Anybody know a bike trail that's become a railroad? No, it doesn't happen. And so when we bought this, we allowed a bike trail, but we told everybody, this is a rail corridor. And someday it will be a rail corridor. And we fought for decades. And finally in 2014, we started the process to actually move it forward through environmental, through engineering. And we've been constructing the Westlake Corridor project, which will be renamed the Monon Corridor here when we open up service here in a few months. So here's the vision. It runs down the Illinois-Indiana border, 8 miles, 6 miles of it on preserved track that we bought in 1990. And the idea was to bring the line up through North Hammond and connect it. Here's the South Shore line, and here is the Monon Corridor that's diving down to the south. So South Shore is coming from the east, and we wanted to design a gateway station where both lines came together. That was the vision. Here is the reality today. This is the South Shore line. You can see the red awning or the orange awning on the roof. That's at grade. Up in the air here from the south, coming up, turning over to the CSX, in the air is the Monon Corridor. So we have both railroads coming together at our gateway station in Hammond. We've got a station here, and we're operational at this station today. Here, it's a center-bound platform. There's a picture of some of our customers getting off an eastbound train, heading home, and getting off at the new platform in North Hammond. The project is a $950 million project. It's 8 miles, 16 bridges on this line. In North Hammond, we're up on structure for 1.5 miles. So if anybody asks you, well, how come it's so expensive? In addition to being electrified, we're up in the air, we're over rivers, we're over railroads, we're over streets, a lot of structural work on this project. Here's a view under construction as you're looking to the south. This is downtown Hammond. At first, the mayor of Hammond, Tom McDermott, fought me tooth and nail. He was opposed as you could be to this project. And if you could say that someone flip-flopped 180 degrees the other way, McDermott flip-flopped 180 degrees, and he will tell you so. He became a passionate advocate for this project. And as part of it, he has re-envisioned his downtown. Holman Avenue was a wide boulevard, about 4 to 5 lanes, depending if it had a turn lane, and people blasted through Hammond at about 45 to 50 miles an hour. He brought in a planner. They narrowed the streets. There's only 2 lanes now. He's got medians in the center, and he's really focusing on downtown Hammond redevelopment. This is the old what's it called? Calumet Bank building, who Rob and Sharon Hart, Northwest Indiana Development, bought. It hadn't been occupied in years, had a 2-story basement that was flooded, and they've rebuilt this structure, and it's now luxury apartments in downtown Hammond. One of the things McDermott said to me early on was, Mike, I'm supporting you. What I would like to see is, could we put in another station right around this area in downtown Hammond? And I said, Mayor, I'll support it, but you have to understand, we can't move forward. We can't, the railroad cannot move forward on it until after my Westlake project is done. Because if I do that, I open up my environmental process again, and now we go back to the beginning, and we start to look at all kinds of things that the National Environmental Protection Act makes you look at: sound, noise, vibration, traffic. There's a whole list of things, and it takes a long time to go through. So he said, fine. So Hammond is funding on its own the engineering and the environmental study to put a new station in there. The day after we open up, we can open up an infill station in downtown Hammond, and it's going to be tied to their vision of transit-oriented development. And they're already seeing a couple $100 million in downtown Hammond that was left for dead. If you hadn't been to Hammond, you probably drove through it 45 miles an hour for a reason. It's coming back. Here is, who remembers where the old Monon Yard was in Hammond, Indiana? That's at 173rd Street. So this was the old Monon Yard, and actually when we first looked at this project, this is where we thought we were going to put the rail yard. It made sense. It once was a rail yard, let's make it a rail yard, although it hadn't been one in 50 years. So the neighbors had like amnesia. They forgot that it was ever there. So nobody really wanted it there. We actually put, let me go back here. We put this parcel here was a junkyard, and it was also a place where somebody owned tractor trailers that they would buy and then scrap. They would buy used tractor trailers and scrap. So the city came and said, why don't you put your rail yard up here in this neighborhood? There was 60 homes in this neighborhood. And the city came to us and said, this neighborhood needs to go, which I never thought I would hear a mayor tell me that you need to take this neighborhood, but we did. So I guess I'm a railroad robber baron, because in between Double Track and Westlake, we acquired 450 properties, 250 residences. And so we acquired all these homes. We cleared this area, there are a lot of environmental issues on it, and this is where the rail yard is going to go. And by the way, the people of homes we took, they really got a good deal. When there's federal money involved in an acquisition of a home, not only do you get just compensation, we pay you to look for your new home, we pay you all your moving costs, we also pay you the differential. So if many of these homes were not in the greatest shape, you don't say, well, you had a terrible home before, so now we're going to put you in a terrible home now. It has to be habitable. So we, in almost 75 to 80% of the cases, I'll give you an example. We had one household in Michigan City, 5 bedrooms, 5 adults living there, $80,000 fair market value. In order to get them a like-kind house, it cost us $200,000. We gave them the additional $120,000. The homeowner was in tears because she went from a very poor quality stock home to an excellent stock, and that $120,000 is tax-free. So we actually didn't have any real pushback on the acquisitions. Most of the people, we actually had people saying, hey, wait a minute, you're not taking my home. Can you move the railroad over just a little bit? So that's 173rd Street. That's our station there. Down the street, about a mile, is Purdue Northwest Campus. So it'll be a great location for people to ride to campus on our trains. A couple months ago, we ran, this is going to be electrified railroad, but we took one of our diesels and hooked up one of our double-decker coaches to do some clearance testing. We got to make sure that your trains fit by your platforms. I don't know if you've ever read about the issue down in South Florida where they built a new line and then separately hired somebody to build the platforms, and the train was a little bit, needed to put either the train on a diet or they needed to put the platform on a diet. They put the platform on a diet. But it didn't go well. So we did clearance testing a couple months ago, which caused a little bit of stir. The rail fans got out and everybody took pictures. So that's one of them that was captured for us. This is a station that we're building in Munster at it's at Ridge Road in downtown Munster. It's sort of an infill station. We don't expect a huge amount of ridership on it, but we'll see. It could, depending upon what people do with property acquisition and development, it could become a really popular station. And then at the end of the line, in the border of Munster and Dyer, is going to be our main station. And we built what you can't see here. This is a pedestrian walkway. This structure right here is the bridge for CSX. So we had to build underneath CSX. It's a single line railroad at that point on there. It's a branch line of theirs, doesn't get a lot of traffic, but it was challenging, I'll say that, to work with a Class 1. I've worked with them for 40 years, so you know, it's not an easy thing to get done, but we finally got it done, and we built an underpass at the station. Our station will be on the east side of our tracks, but our parking will be on the west side of the tracks, just by the virtue of where the community wanted us to put the parking. And here's the clearance train going by the Munster Dyer station. Munster actually paid for a betterment to put in wood slats rather than our typical metal. So they paid for a couple $1 million of upgrades because that's what fits within their community. And so they paid for some. I'll provide you the Chevy if you want the Cadillac. You pay the markup. We're in the process of finishing up our Monon Corridor schedule. We will open up service with 5 one-seat rides from Munster Dyer to Chicago in the morning. So I'll have a train that leaves at 5:30. I'll probably have one at 6, 6:30, 7, 7:30. And that'll be our one-seat rides. And then at night, coming home, for people coming from the city, we'll have 5 coming back, 3:34, 4:35, 5:36. However, we're also going to run off-peak evening and weekend shuttles. So what we're going to do is once those one-seat rides finish, we're going to run a 2-car train from Munster to the Gateway Station in Hammond, where people can get off of the train, go down the stairs, and then jump on the South Shore line. We'll basically run that on an hourly service basis. So day one, day one, we'll have almost full-time service on the South Shore line. It kind of reminds me of the way the operations of on Monon Corridor. Right? I know I got Lakeshore Corridor. Well, I call it. We're going to change that. We're branding the whole railroad. We're going to retain the South Shore line to brand because everybody knows that brand. We're going to call what had been the South Shore Line Corridor, we're renaming that the Lakeshore Corridor, with a tip of the hat to the old Chicago Lakeshore and South Bend. And then on what we call the Westlake Project, that will now be the Monon Corridor, all underneath the brand of the South Shore Line. Thank you to my beautiful assistant. And so we're going to run connecting trains like they used to do on the old Interurban schedules, so that you can ride, if you miss the one-seat ride and you want to go into the city at 10:30, you'll jump on the shuttle, take it to North Hammond, and pick up a South Shore Line train to Chicago. Or you don't want to go to Chicago, you want to go to South Bend, you'll connect up that way. And so it really is, I think one of my friends at Metric called it elegant, the way we can open up and run almost full service day one. So it's a lot cheaper than us trying to run a 25 or 30 train schedule all the way to Chicago, but we accomplish pretty much the same thing. Our rolling stock. I showed you in the beginning a beautiful picture of the cars when they were brand new. Our 1982 cars, hard to believe, are now 43 years old. We are doing a complete gut job of those cars. Our employees in Michigan City are craftsmen. They will strip a car down. They will pull all out the guts. We're putting in new propulsion, new floors, new windows, new bathrooms. I say new USB chargers. These electronic phone companies drive me nuts. I did USBs, and they came out with USB-Cs or some other new gadget that that the chargers don't plug into because the latest phone has got a different jack. But I'm sticking with what we got. But these cars, here's the inside. We rip them apart, and they do a great job, and they're just about finished doing what we call an end life, because we think they'll get about another 12 and a half years of service. They're stainless steel. We had the car bodies checked for structural integrity. And so we plan on these cars running through about 2035, at which point in time we're going to be ready for a 50 to 70 car order. And who knows what we'll buy at the time. The rail technology market is changing very, very quickly. The Monon Corridor that I just showed you, we electrified it. Had I known where the market was going to be 10 years earlier, I probably wouldn't have electrified it, and we would have run battery electric, because the battery electric cars can now go about 50 miles. We would have put a charging station at the end at Munster Dyer, run that 8-mile corridor with battery, and then got back to the charging station, which is the Lakeshore Corridor, and run the rest of the route into Chicago. And so we wouldn't have electrified. We would have just taken advantage of the fact that we already have 90 miles of charging station built in. So who knows what kind of equipment will be purchased, in 10 years from now. Sadler, yes, yes, very good friends of ours. We've almost actually bought some of their equipment. I mentioned at the beginning that we go to South Bend, Indiana, and I used to ride to South Bend, Indiana. In the early 70s, when I mentioned we were kicked out of downtown South Bend, we put a train in the river. We had a couple fatalities. We weren't maintaining the system. I say we because I stand in the same shoes as the people who maintained the railroad for 100 years. And so we were asked to move, and we moved out to where the Amtrak station is now along Bendix. It's in the middle of nowhere. Has anybody ridden the train from South Bend? Am I wrong? Is it in the middle of nowhere? Yeah, thank you. And so at the time, John Shalio was the general manager of the airport in the late 80s, and he said to my predecessor, Jerry Hannes, you know, there's a freight spur that comes off your line at Grandview, and it runs within a quarter mile of our east terminal. Why don't you come into the airport, you build a quarter mile off of Bendix and come into the airport. We'll bring you there on a temporary basis, and then we're going to bring you in on the west side. We've been operating on the east side of the terminal for 35 years on a temporary basis. Yeah. Railroad time is not exactly the same thing as what other people might consider temporary. So this is our route today coming from Chicago. We go past the airport and then we come around on a reverse C. There's about 23 or 24 grade crossings there. It's really slow. The track's not in great condition because we've been trying to get to the west side and we've been deferring. We have been purposely deferring because who wants to spend tens of millions of dollars to upgrade a section of line that's going to be abandoned? So this is the proposed route that we're trying to achieve. This is at least my second time through trying to get this done. I had a momentum to get this done about 8 years ago, and then it kind of fizzled, and now it's back in full force. We think that if we can get to the west side of the airport, we'll not only save time on the average of 11 to 15 minutes per train, we'll also eliminate 18 grade crossings, so it's be much, much safer. It'll attract additional ridership because we reduce time to and from market for every single train. Again, savings of time. South Bend's goal, which has always been the goal of my board, is to get 90-minute service from South Bend. It's 90 minutes to Chicago. The Hiawatha service from Milwaukee, 90 minutes from Milwaukee on Amtrak to downtown Chicago. That's the model that we're going after. This says 14 grade crossings, we're actually eliminating 18. We have just about finished 100% of the engineering. We are waiting for our environmental clearance document from the Federal Aviation Administration. And this, if we get to the west side, it also gives us the opportunity to run from Michigan City, which is 30 minutes away, a shuttle from Michigan City to the airport. And so like that Monon Corridor shuttle I talked about, the vision would be is that we would provide a 2-car shuttle from downtown Michigan City, that new station I showed you, to the airport, in addition to the 6 round trips that I run every day from South Bend. Here's the vision. This is the Norfolk Southern tracks here. We're adjacent to them. We don't race them anymore. I know that's folklore. There were no speedometers then. I'm told they counted the poles. And there were 16, how many poles per mile, and they would figure out by how long it took them, how fast they were going. But we don't race NS anymore. So this is our track today, going towards downtown South Bend. We actually go, as I said, go past the airport, and around here we make the reverse C. The idea is that someday, and the people in South Bend really kind of want us to return to South Bend from whence we came. And so we're going to build this project so that while we're going to go into the east side of the airport, we're going to design it so that someday we could build an airport transfer station and make this little line into the airport a drop-off for the trains that are going into downtown South Bend. Here is a depiction of all, these dots are all the grade crossings today. This is what we do today. Let's see if we can fire this up. I think I can do it. I'll let you do it. Hit that button. Got it. There we go. So that's our current route today. This is what we want to do. We want to come directly from the main line, straight into the airport. And this is a graphic of kind of what that would be. That's Lincoln Way that we're about to go underneath. People go on that road about 60 miles an hour, so grade separation is really important, and we only have 2 grade crossings on this route. So we are really, really excited about this. This is a $112 million project. The state of Indiana in this last budget session, which, trust me, it was a very tough budget session, and they cut. They found $28 million to contribute towards this project on the condition that St. Joseph County, South Bend, and others find the other 50%. And so we're well on our way to putting together a consortium of funding. NICD's throwing in $6 million. The University of Notre Dame and First Source Bank are throwing in private sector dollars to fund the public project, and we're working with South Bend and St. Joseph County to make up the difference. And then we're ready to go after federal dollars. So we're really excited about making this part of the project a reality. Let's see, there we go. And so there was a lot of discussion when we went through the environmental about the folks that wanted to see us downtown. So the NICD board agreed. And so we put in the goal to not only get 90-minute service from South Bend, but also to work with them to get downtown. So I said to the folks who were saying, why aren't we going downtown? I said, it's not in my plan. I said, if you want to see something done, you got to put it in the strategic plan, and then the board tells staff to get it done. So now it's in our strategic plan. Therefore, this project will get to the west side of the airport, and then phase 2 will ultimately be getting to downtown South Bend. And here we are. Here's an old picture in front of the old LaSalle Hotel. When we used to board in downtown South Bend, there's a lot of people in downtown South Bend who are really enthusiastic about making this happen. It's a more expensive project because although there are some people who think I can use the unused space on the Norfolk Southern's right-of-way, I have news for you. The Norfolk Southern isn't really enthusiastic about giving me their right-of-way. So we're gonna have to build adjacent to them, kind of like we did on the Monon Corridor when we approached CSX for the area just south of Maynard Junction. CSX wasn't really enthusiastic about us sharing right-of-way. So it'll be a more expensive project, but I think with the right passion and influence, it'll happen.
Didn't the city just buy the old station?
City bought the old Union Station in downtown South Bend. The station owner there is a guy named Kevin Smith. He was a big advocate trying to push for us to not go to the airport, to go downtown. I'm of the opinion that we should do both, and that's the way we're going. Some of the amenities we offer on our train, Wi-Fi. Every one of our cars is equipped with Wi-Fi. We first put in 3G about 10 years ago. It's gone kaput. And so we're upgrading to 5G. So, really important amenity for our customers. We have all brand new ticket vending machines. We got most of our tickets are purchased on the phone with a phone app, probably approaching 90%. We still do onboard fares. I'm trying to get rid of them. Cash has a tendency to disappear. Most organizations want to get rid of cash. It costs money to process cash, but we're still doing it. So those are a couple of our amenities. We also have a great safety program. It's called the CSA app. So if you see something on the train, you don't have to call up and say, well, there's this very scary looking woman and she's wearing a black pantsuit or whatever, and then that person's sees that you're calling the police. You can text the dispatch center anonymously and say, there's something going on my train. Here's the train car I'm on. So this is just one of the enhancements for security that we have. We also have cameras everywhere. I was probably filmed 45 times from the point I left the hotel till I got here. Cameras are everywhere. We are great believers in cameras, and they really help deter crime. And if a crime occurs, they really help us in prosecuting whoever is responsible. I mentioned bikes on trains. We introduced bikes on trains in 2016. We didn't have a whole lot of trains that could accommodate bikes because of a lot of our platforms were high or low level, so we didn't allow it. And so you can see the progression of the bikes on trains. We had 1,134 from April till November bike uses the first year. I want you to take a look at 2025. Oh, I'm sorry. It's not. In August of this year, I should have updated this slide. We had 1,700 bike uses on just 1 month, almost more than the first 3 years combined. Bikes on our trains are becoming an incredibly popular mode. The other thing I'm going to say is we're seeing more and more intrastate or interstate travel within the state of Indiana. The old interurban model where you went from one town to the next, that is growing, and it's going to grow even faster with a couple different reasons. One, the Bikes on Trains program is really pushing that. And we got a great trail system in Northwest Indiana too. The advent of some of these e-bikes, the easy to pedal, we're going to have more of these at our stations. 3 automated cars, they're coming. I guarantee you, we were out in San Francisco earlier this year. They're all over San Francisco. You've got to have a leap of faith to get into them and let somebody else drive for you. But it's coming. Look at your cell phone. How many devices does your cell phone do that you used to have 40 other devices 40 years ago? Driverless cars are coming. When that happens, one of the challenges that we have as a rail system is what do you do for that last mile? So a family wants to come to our station at Dune Park, but they want to go to the beach. The beach is 1.25 miles away. Do they haul their kids and their umbrellas and their towels and their coolers 1.5 miles? Oh, you get in the automated vehicle that takes you back and forth to where you want to go. Uber and Lyft, that's their model. Eventually, they believe they will be running an automated transportation system. That will help us. That will help us for people who want to get on the train and they want to go to Notre Dame, but they get to the airport and they have to figure out, well, I want to go to downtown South Bend, or I want to go to Notre Dame, or I want to go wherever. There's a bright future for us, not only for the typical travel, which was from Indiana to Chicago, or Chicago back to Indiana, but from places within Indiana. We see a bright future for that. I want to show you this is our 5-year strategic plan. When I first got to the railroad, our annual capital program, that's $2 billion down there. My annual capital program in 2014 when I got to the railroad was $20 million a year. Our 5-year program is $2 billion. This is in large part because the state of Indiana has seen its way to, between the counties and the state, put in over $1 billion in investment. That tells me 2 things. One, the state's really bullish on the railroad and on the return on investment. It also tells me that the state's going to want to make sure that their investment pays off. So we really have a good position with the state. We've got to do our end of the bargain and continue to perform well. But we're the last interurban standing, and we've done it because we have been able to change. We have been able to grow. We have been able to modify what we do, and we've leveraged opportunities that really exist, and we're really excited about the future of this system. When I got to the railroad in 2014, I was handed a 20-year strategic plan, and I read it, and I said, "This isn't 20 years. This is 20 minutes." It screamed out, "Let's get this done." We're finished with it. We've been able to check off everything on the strategic plan, which many times people do these plans and they put them on the shelf and they go away and they run what they do. They gather dust. This plan was implemented, so we're now in the process of redoing the strategic plan for the next 20 years. What does the region want to see in the railroad? What do our passengers want? What do our stakeholders want? What do our elected officials? What's the business community want? So we're interviewing people. We're going out and we're gathering feedback. We've done surveys. And hopefully by the end of this year, or maybe early next year, the NICD board will receive this information and they'll adopt a new 20-year strategic plan that will guide staff in pushing forward what's the ideas that we want to see, what do we want to do, how do we want to improve, what's the railroad going to look like. These, you may not see any of these, you may see all of these in the strategic plan. But the Westlake project at one point in time was going to go to Lowell, St. John, and Cedar Lake. We stopped it at Munster Dyer. That's the money we had. That's as far as we got. So phase 2 of Westlake. New service to Valparaiso. We could run down the Westlake Corridor and at Maynard Junction, jump on the CN or along the CN and run to Valpo. Or we could run on the Chicago, Fort Wayne, and Eastern and have a shuttle type train from downtown Valpo and connect in at Clark Road in Gary. We could take the branch line off of that South Shore Freight owns and bring service over to LaPorte. This is probably going to happen. We used to serve New Carlisle once upon a time. There's huge development in New Carlisle now, in case you haven't noticed. There's a huge data center. I know that can be a 4-letter word these days, but there is a huge data center. There's also a $10 billion GM Samsung plant that's there. It's employing 3,000 people, and there's more investment coming along the way. So we're looking at restoring service to New Carlisle. Downtown Gary at the Gary Metro Station, that needs to be completely reimagined, and there's a process to make that happen. Really looking forward to that. That's low-level boarding, and it slows our trains down every day. I'd love to see a high-level boarding platform. Metra, our service on Metra. We want to invest money on the other side of the border in Illinois. We want to help Metra do a couple things. Right now, we're investing $200 million in Metra. Metra is a quadruple-track territory railroad until it gets to downtown Chicago. And then at the last minute, before we go into our terminals, they go from 4 tracks to 3, right at the choke point. So we're spending money because we're adding 26 trains to their service every day. We're spending money to make it 4 tracks all the way in. It's going to open up 25% more capacity in the line, and it'll be better for both Metra and us. But what we really want to do is put in bidirectional signaling. Metra does not have bidirectional signaling north of 67th Street. What that means is that they have 4 tracks in that area, but 2 tracks go south and 2 tracks go north. And the signal system doesn't allow you to use 3 tracks or 1 track or all 4 tracks. On our lines, we have complete bidirectional signaling. I can run a train any direction at any time. And that gives our dispatchers incredible flexibility. Metra needs that on their system, because what I'd love to do is travel up Metra's track 4, which is their far eastern track, bring our Indiana trains up track 4 and never get behind one of the Metra locals. Metra stops every 5 blocks. And if one of our express trains gets behind them, we're delayed 15 or 20 minutes. It's a 14-mile corridor. It's 65 miles an hour grade separated territory. We need to get that speed up to at least 79 miles an hour. There are no grade crossings, but we're stuck at 65 miles an hour. So I'm working with my friend Jim Derwinski, who's the CEO of Metra, to invest in that system for the benefit of both railroads. I'm convinced we can cut 5 to 7 minutes off of our travel time for every single train if we can make some improvements on Metra. So really interested in that. I mentioned the new rolling stock before. We want to extend double track from Michigan City, about a mile to our shops in Michigan City. And God knows what else. There may be other projects that somebody comes up with out there, but we're really, really looking for input. We want to see what the community wants, what the stakeholders want, so we can put into a plan something for staff to say, this is what we're going to do and work towards for the next 20 years. And I'm finishing up with one of my favorite quotes from Daniel Byrne: make no little plans. And the rest of it goes, because little plans don't inspire anybody. They don't get done because nobody really cares. And Burnham said this not long after Chicago burnt down. And he's like, hey, let's rebuild, and let's not rebuild small, let's rebuild big, with big vision. And people get behind big vision. So don't be afraid. Times are always tough. Money's always tough to get. There's always competition for projects. We need to dream big. We need to have big vision and go after things that will change the shape and nature of what we're trying to do. And from our perspective, it's to make this little interurban railroad relevant for the next 100 years to come. I thank you guys for the opportunity to be with you today. I'm more than happy to stay around and answer questions. Once again, thank you very much.